Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to my TED Talk. Thank you for coming. My name is Kai, and I'm going to be talking about creativity to you guys. So, if you would all close your eyes real quick. Whoops. And just think of as many uses for an ordinary brick as you can. I'll give you a couple seconds to do so. Alright, you can open your eyes. So the skill that you have just used to do this is called Divergent Thinking, and this is the thought process to produce ideas by exploring many possible solutions. And before I get too much into this, I will define creativity for you guys, since it's such an elusive phenomenon. While I was doing my research, I stumbled across many different definitions for creativity. Almost every definition that I came across from different research articles was different, which really confused me at first. And then I found one definition that I thought enveloped creativity the best, and that was one that combined definitions used by Eastern and Western cultures of the world. So in the West, we put a lot of emphasis on novelty, which is kind of creating unique ideas that no one else has really thought of and are very original. And utility, so making sure ideas are useful and serve a purpose. And in the East, they put a lot of emphasis on aesthetics, making sure their work is aesthetically pleasing and looks good, and authenticity, so making sure they incorporate ideas from the past and traditions from the past. So I thought that this definition really encompassed creativity to the fullest and really showed the best of how it works. And so, going back to Divergent Thinking, this is considered creative in our culture because we put so much emphasis on novelty. And that's really what Divergent Thinking is thinking of a lot of unique ideas. So, understanding creativity is very essential to fully digesting the positive aspects of creative training. And it's really essential because you really need to know how you're developing your creativity and what is going into that and what creativity really is. So, have any of you ever thought that maybe creativity and inspiration were interchangeable or one and the same? Because I know I did at the beginning of my research. I started off trying to focus on inspiration, and after I researched it a little bit and really understood what it was, I switched to creativity. And I will define inspiration for you guys right now, just so you know where I was coming from. Inspiration is actually a motivational response to creative stimuli that compels the individual to bring their own ideas into reality. So instead of what I thought inspiration was, which is the thought process that really gives you the creative ideas, it is actually a motivational response that motivates you to bring your own creative ideas into reality. So, as I'm sure that you guys have been reading this comic instead of listening to me ramble on about inspiration, I will just go forward with it. So, some methods that Calvin could have used to inspire himself would be something like viewing an artist's work or viewing an amazing occurrence in nature or anything that really touches him and speaks to him and gets him going. So one last thing that I want to talk about to really understand creativity is that there is a large amount of domain generality, and what that means is that anyone has the potential to be creative and enhance these creative traits. It doesn't just have to be a stereotypical creative person like an artist or a musician. It could be a chemist, a cook, virtually anybody. So, moving on, I'd like to talk about some short-term methods that can be applied to temporarily enhance creativity. And the first one is listening to happy music while you work. This is because it elevates your mood, and this is over listening to another mood of music or just in silence while you work. Listening to happy music really enhances your creativity because it causes an elevated mood, which is proven to enhance your creative thinking. The second one is squeezing different balls, and So squeezing a very malleable ball would increase your divergent creativity because as you're squeezing it, it's forming all these different shapes in your hand. You're never really getting the same shape, and this facilitates multiple ideas. And on the other hand, squeezing a resistant or solid ball increases your convergent thinking, which is facilitating only one correct response. So you're looking for one solution, and that is because when you're squeezing this ball, it's only coming up with one shape. Another thing that Calvin could have done to increase his creativity is finding an activity that allows intrinsic motivation. And what this is anything that you really enjoy doing and you're doing it for the sole purpose of your enjoyment or entertainment is something that you're doing by intrinsic motivation. And so something for me that I'm intrinsically motivated to do is skateboarding. And that is because it really gives me a lot of pleasure and I have a lot of fun doing it, and nothing else out there is really making me do it but my desire too. On the other hand, extrinsic motivators have actually been proven to decrease your creativity. And so these would be things like a paycheck for a job, or grades in school, or receiving praise for completing a task. Because you're not doing these things for your own enjoyment and self-improvement, it has actually been proven to decrease your creativity. The last thing Calvin could have done to increase his creativity to write his story would be what I call the Salvador Dali technique. And this is a technique that Dali used to inspire himself and come up with creative ideas for his paintings and artwork. So what he did was he would sit in a chair with a bowl in his lap and hold a spoon over the bowl, and he would close his eyes and wait for sleep to come over him, and right as he transitioned from conscious to unconscious, he would drop the spoon into the bowl, which would clatter and wake him up, and then he would go quickly write down all the ideas that he had while in this state. And the reason that this worked is because we are able to connect with our more creative minds in an easier and less judgmental manner while we are in this hypnagogic state, which is the transition between wake and sleep. And so Dali would do this several times, write down his ideas, and then choose the one that he thought was best to complete. So I would like to now move on to some longer term methods to enhance your creativity. And these also have longer term results as opposed to these other methods that I've talked about that only really are effective while you're doing them. And most of the long-term methods for enhancing creativity exist in the form of training. And so one example of this is the Perdue Creative Thinking Program, which was thought up by Perdue University in Indiana. And this program develops 4 traits of creativity. The first one is fluency, which is thinking of many, many, many ideas. They don't have to be unique, they don't have to be very different, it has to be a large volume of ideas. The next one is flexibility, and this is thinking of many ideas but in different categories. So going back to the brick, if you thought of a lot of conventional ways for a brick to be used, like you could build a house, you could build a barn, you could build anything like that, that's not very flexible. So you want to be like, you could drop it down a hole to see how deep the hole goes, you could smash a window with it, stuff like that. Going on, the third one is originality, and this is thinking of ideas that you don't think anyone else would ever come up with, very unique ideas. And the last one is elaboration, which is adding details to these ideas to really flesh them out and make them stronger. And so these are the 4 traits that this program really enhances, but one cool thing that I found out is if you want to become a more creative writer or a more creative artist, there are actually programs that are tailored to those specific fields and actually develop different traits that are more included in those fields. So this program consists of audio tapes with a story of a creative person and tips on how to think like that person. and then also comes with exercise sheets that relate to those audio tapes. And so a research team did tests on this training to come to find which section of the training actually is most effective in developing your creativity. And they found that the most structured practices were the most effective way. So anything that really gives you a structured list of what you need to do is actually the most beneficial in developing your creativity, which I thought was really cool because I feel like this would be very easy to introduce into school or a work environment. So overall, there is a lot of evidence that really anyone can develop their creativity through a training program like this, and I would really recommend it. So innovation, I think, is a very major aspect of the world's success and progression, and I think having and possessing creative traits like these really gives you unique solutions to problems. It allows you to think of these unique solutions and have a lot of innovative ideas. After all, we are all working with these same materials, and it's almost impossible to innovate in this advanced world without being influenced by prior creations. It's kind of like the standing on the shoulders of giants idea. If you're gonna think of a new idea or a new invention, you're probably going to be influenced by a later or prior creation. And one thing that is making it very difficult to do this in the modern world is something called patent and copyright trolls, which are companies that exist for the sole purpose of seeking out creations that maybe copied a little too much from a prior one, or maybe had a little too much influence and it's a little too similar, and suing them because of that. So I think that really makes it a little more difficult to innovate and come up with new inventions in this world. So I think that having these advanced traits could really allow you to be influenced by these prior creations, but in a way that is creative and innovative and maybe doesn't get you noticed as much by these trolls. So having this enhanced creativity could also help with major issues and puzzles of the world like climate change or solving world hunger. I think it could allow you to approach them in a different way and maybe think about them in ways that no one else has thought about yet. So I would recommend individuals that are seeking enhanced creative traits to participate in training like the Perdue Creative Thinking program, because it allows you to more understand what creativity is and why you are developing it and how it is developed. And it also allows you to have long-term results, whereas the methods that I talked about before that really didn't give you long-term results and they only were effective while you were doing them. And so when you want to be creative, I don't think you always want to have a stress ball in your hand or listen to happy music or make yourself fall asleep. You really just want those ideas in your head already. And although creativity is a very elusive phenomenon, developing these traits that constitute it is very beneficial for any field because it allows individuals to innovate in creative and unique ways. Thank you.